So we're looking at Luke 21 verses 25 and 26, and we've gone to early writings to try and understand what that's referring to. We went to early writings page 41. So before we move on, I just want to read some background information. If we go to Ellen White's biographies, the coding is 1BIO. Page 153. Paragraph 2. And it goes to 154, paragraph 4. The subtitle is Troubles in Europe and Their Supposed Significance. Is that on your phones? I don't know if you have access to that. Yeah? Okay, so I'll give you a second to find it. We know that this is not inspired, these biographies, but they're pretty good. Quite naturally, those expecting the near advent of Christ, being students of prophecy, kept a close eye on world events. This was particularly so through 1848, as troubles involving many nations suddenly broke out in Europe. The sweeping prophetic view given by Jesus on the Mount of Olives, recorded in Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 21, led to an interpretation of the troubles in Europe as an immediate precursor of the Second Advent. The words recorded in Matthew 24, verses 29 and 30, with reference to the shaking of the powers in heaven, seemed cohesive. Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken, and then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. So you can already see that they're equating that the shaking of the powers of heaven is what's happening in Europe. So that's what Ellen White's going to be addressing. Jane Loughborough, who was 16 in 1848, was an Adventist, but not part of the Sabbath-keeping group. He later wrote, "Many of the Adventist ministers who had not as yet heard the third angel's message saw this confusion in Europe and supposed it must be the rallying of the nations for the battle of the great day of God Almighty." And what's that? So that's Armageddon. They think this is what they see now is Armageddon. But the Adventists who had clung to their confidence in the fulfillment of prophecy on October 22nd, and who are now accepting the Sabbath of the Fourth Commandment as the sign or seal of the living God, were devising ways and means of presenting their message to the world. "You are too late with your sealing message," their fellow believers of earlier days asserted, "for the battle of the great day and the Lord's actual coming are right upon us." Someone paraphrase what that last paragraph is saying, where it begins, "But the Adventists." We know what people are thinking. Many people are thinking the thing that's happening in Europe is the preparation for Armageddon. She says that in a paragraph before. It says, many of the Adventist ministers who had not as yet heard of the third angel's message saw this confusion in Europe and thought that it must be the preparation for Armageddon. Actually, before we read the but Adventists, let's go to the many Adventist ministers. Who are these Adventist ministers? Who's she talking about?
Those who joined after 1844.
Those who joined after 1844?
Adventists who never became part of the Seventh Adventist, because these Adventists cannot tell us people.
Okay, so these are like the first day Adventists, you think? Anyone else?
Those who believed in second
Who believed in?
October.
Those who believed in 22nd October. When you say the first day Adventists, you're saying the people who didn't agree with October?
I mean, people who are preaching this message, of course, were not part of these Adventists who waited for October.
I didn't catch what you said.
I said we have got two Adventists here. There are two Adventists here. Those who claim to the fulfillment of prophecy on 22nd October.
I'm in the paragraph before. Many of the Adventist ministers, are those the ones who had accepted October?
No.
So you disagree with my brother?
So, when it says Adventist, so we know the word Adventist, those who are looking for the second advent of Christ. So the people are proclaiming the light before October 22nd. So the main Adventist in the first in paragraph 5 of 153, I think is those who reject October 22nd.
So many of the Adventist ministers who had not as yet heard the third angel's message, so they're the ones who have rejected October 22nd, not the ones who have accepted it.
The hymns and the rest.
The text is saying that they had not yet heard the third angel's message. So, because they had not yet heard the third angel's message, they were giving a message which was contrary to what the scripture says, because they were referring to the wars, the rumors of war in Europe as the
I just want to know who they are.
So they are the group of Miller and its associates, whose ministers before 1844 October.
So these are the people who have failed October 22nd?
No, they're the people before October 22nd.
Yeah, but we're in a history that's after October 22nd. So these Adventist ministers now, after October 22nd.
Speaking of those who had not, those before October 22nd, though she's in 1840, after October 1844, but she's speaking of those before.
So are these people the ones that failed October? Or the ones that passed October?
Let's read again this statement.
Many of the Adventist ministers who had not as yet heard of the third angel's message saw the confusion in Europe and supposed it must be the rallying of the nations.
There's no faith.
But they're Adventist ministers today, not Adventist ministers before. Brother Festus, you say? Were you saying something?
No.
I heard some voices at the back.
I spoke before you spoke.
Yeah, so you did say something.
I said that there are ministers after October 22nd, those who have not heard, because it says those who have not heard the third angel's message. So I say it must be after October 22nd.
I was trying to argue and say, when you compare many of the Adventist ministers who have not as yet heard the third angel's message, so this confusion. So they have never heard the third angel's message. But the next paragraph says, but the Adventists who had clung to their confidence in the fulfillment of the prophecy. So these ones understood the third angel's message, and they understood that about the Sabbath, and they understood about the sign of the living God, and they knew that Christ would not have come. This would not be the war of Armageddon, because even God has given them a work now to do. So those who are in darkness about the third angel's message are the ones that now are predicting that it is the war of Armageddon. And I believe those are the foolish virgins because they never understood the third angel's message. They never planned to the fulfillment of the October 22nd prophecy.
I think love is taking us back because in the paragraph 4, it ended saying he later wrote that many of the Adventist ministers who had. So we must find when because I think he was writing this, but now we don't know when he was referring.
You don't know when what the time period he's referring to.
Because this is, I think they are writing what Loughborough has written.
We know when, because it says they saw the confusion in Europe. That's 1848. So paragraph 5 is in 1848. So in 1848, many of the Adventist ministers haven't yet heard of the third angel, and therefore they think this is Armageddon preparation. So I'm asking who those Adventist ministers are. Is that Himes and all of those people who are now opposing, or are they faithful Adventist ministers who haven't quite heard things yet? Which one do you think it is?
I suppose it is Himes because...
The unfaithful people?
Yeah.
You think they're unfaithful?
So if you look at paragraph 4 of one bio, it says John Loughborough, who was 1848, was an Adventist, but not part of the Sabbath-keeping group. So there are two types of Adventists. He's an Adventist, but he's not part of those Adventists who are Sabbath-keeping. So when you come down, I believe he's speaking of those two groups. So Sabbath-keeping, who accept October 22nd, and these are Adventists who think these are Armageddon are Adventists who are not Sabbath-keeping, therefore would reject October 22nd. And I think this includes Himes, Miller, and all the rest.
So Loughborough in 48, when he's 16, he's part of a group who have rejected October 1844.
It says they had not yet had. It says they didn't reject, but they had not yet had. We are putting words into this statement.
Who's putting words? I am. What words have I put in? I don't want to put any words in. Tell me what words I'm putting in.
And I'm hearing things like unfaithful, and hearing things like rejected. Yet the statement is saying that
I want to identify who those Adventist ministers are. So, are those Adventist ministers the ones that were like Himes or Snow? Is it those ministers who had failed October, or is it ministers who have passed October but no one's told them yet about the Sabbath? Which group is it? That's all I'm asking. That's why I didn't hear anybody adding stuff in there, but we want to try and understand who those two groups are.
It must be those who passed October but has not yet had the message of the third angel.
So you're saying that now you're putting words in there. We have to use some logic. I didn't think it was putting words there.
In this history, we only have two types of Advent. When we talk about Advent, they were expecting the second coming of Christ in October 22nd. And for them to be in 1848 and they have not heard of this, that angel's message, it only means that they never continued following the light that came in October 22nd. So, though it says yet they had not as yet heard of that angel's message, it does not necessarily mean that they were innocent. Probably at that time, historically, they had heard of it and they had rejected it in terms of history.
So you're saying
this is not prophecy, this is history that he's recording, and at that time they had rejected it. So the reason why they had not heard of the third angel's message is because they had put themselves in a position where they could not be benefited by the third angel's message. Sister It says, those who did not accept the winner Christ could not be benefited by the ministration of Christ in the heavenly sanctuary. So it's because they rejected October 22nd, that's why they did not hear the third angel's message.
So you don't think it's an issue of time? Because it takes Ellen White 2 years to catch up.
I don't think so at this point.
Let him speak. So, by 1848, these Adventist ministers are identifying bad people who have rejected the truth, and therefore they must be part of at Himes and all of that other group, and maybe some others, but
I suppose so, because the next paragraph says those who clung to October 22nd, so it's like doing a contrast. That's how.
Okay, do we know for sure whether Loughborough was part of an Adventist group who were in rebellion?
I'm not sure.
Maybe someone can find that. If you can check the bio for Loughborough, someone could do that.
But if you read Darmstadt, I think in the quotes that after October 22nd, and the history leading to 1845, 46, all the Adventist groups, or these Adventist preachers were divided into two. Those who continued with the light of the sanctuary, then later the Sabbath, and then the Second Advent Association. So I've never seen a that group, but probably it's there.
Brother?
Yeah. Because the statement here said that who had not as yet heard. I think that's a different difference. Those who heard and rejected, and those who never heard have heard the message. And I said before, this group refers to those who never heard, not those who heard and rejected.
Yes.
Because you still remember there were other Adventists who were not part of, who were not embedded in the group, and there were Adventists.
What you say? The Adventist ministers, who are they? Good or bad?
Bad.
But they haven't heard the third angel yet.
Okay, what does that mean?
It means no one told them. They may know about the sanctuary, but it doesn't mean they know about the third angel.
But we can't know this.
Okay. So, like this, the ones who know who told them in this paragraph.
No one's told them yet.
No, I'm saying the ones who know.
Yeah.
Who know about the Sabbath truth. Who told them?
I don't know. It doesn't give us that information, but they figured it out somehow.
I think the hearing is like it was revealed to them as they continue to study through that history.
Okay.
Yeah. So this was rejected October 22nd, so it cannot be revealed unto them.
So it can't be revealed unto them.
So the sanctuary is connected with that. You can't have a problem without understanding of the sanctuary. So,
who are these Adventist ministers? Good or bad people?
they are bad.
Okay. So you can't have the sanctuary message without the third angel.
You can't have the sanctuary without the third angel's message.
When did Ellen White accept the sanctuary message?
It's not clear in my mind. But I know she became a Sabbath keeper in 1840.
So she knows about Himes.
Yes.
Sorry, not Himes.
No.
Edson.
Yeah.
Hiram Edson. Yeah. She knows about that. Yeah. Takes her. She knows Bates.
Yes.
So it takes her 2 years in rebellion to catch up.
Yeah.
So she doesn't make the connection between the third angel and the sanctuary. For 2 years it takes her.
Yes. But the time she's writing this quote, she already understands. And therefore she understands the Bible.
Are God's people scattered
1844.
after 1844?
Yes.
How do people communicate with one another? I'm asking him. You could stop interrupting. How do people communicate with one another?
During that time, I'm not sure.
What does God tell Ellen White to tell James White to do? Anyone? Sorry? Start printing. When does he start printing? Sorry? It's quite late, whenever it is. It's not early. So without a printing press, how are people going to even know what's going on? Because not everybody's in those meetings where they're hammering out these truths and we have this kind of fairy tale picture. They're all coming together and it's all good. And they're doing 7 years of study. Not everybody's attending all of that. People could be hundreds of miles from each other.
Yeah, that's true, but when you go into that history and you look at the development of the leadings that the Lord gave us as led to the second of Proverbs, you could not see 22nd October 2004 unless you have seen the real Christ that this is the past time. So when you come to this history, the believers, because I understand that time period was Pentecost, there was that falling of the Holy Spirit. And those who have been following faithfully the teachings of the Lord, even if they never met together to study, but in their own or maybe 2 or 3 personal studies, they could be able to see because of the obedience.
That's Pentecost, not the days leading up to Pentecost. You don't mark Pentecost in 50, you mark it pre-50.
But you understand it's a progressive history, just some kind of progression.
Okay.
And it begins, it doesn't begin in 1920, it begins in progress.
My brother?
So I want to understand something you confused me in this one. So paragraph 4.
4. Paragraph 3.
Paragraph 4.
4.
So, who was still in 1848 and was relevant but not a part of the Sabbath Keepers group? He later wrote. So, my question is now paragraph 5. Many of the advanced ministers who have not as yet had the Parminder message, so this confusion. Who wrote this one?
Sorry?
This word of who?
Say that again?
This one. Who did this one? Many of the advanced ministers who wrote those ones. And then later on.
Who's writing all of that?
Yeah.
Loughborough's writing that. Loughborough, she said, who wrote, and then Loughborough's going to write many. She's going to write paragraph 5 and paragraph 6. Because paragraph 5, you've got the reference, GSAM, and the next one says Ibid. Sister Emma, did you find out where Loughborough was in 1848 when he's 16 in that group?
Actually, what
His family started to attend lectures in 42 to 44, but it seems he was only, it doesn't tell you how old he was, but it seems it's after that he started to go to school and brings half Christ into 48. So I don't know.
No, but I'm just wondering, the group that he's associated with, are they faithful or are they rebels?
Yeah, if we see in that paragraph, Loughborough is giving us the contrast of those ones who accepted the third angel message with those ones who have not, in the sense that these ones who have not accepted, what they are preaching is that the second coming of Christ is now nigh, and they were saying that the confusion in Europe was the battle of the great day of the God Almighty.
Got that?
And then
You said they haven't accepted.
sorry?
You said those who have accepted and those who haven't accepted. 2 groups, you said that.
Yeah.
It didn't say they haven't accepted, you said they haven't heard.
Okay.
You're turning haven't heard into haven't accepted. And then my brother Kephas is going to give a story that says they didn't hear because they didn't want to hear, because they're not being led by the Holy Spirit.
Okay. If we go to the next paragraph.
Okay, let's go to the next paragraph. We haven't read that one. But the Adventists who had clung to their confidence in the fulfillment of prophecy on October 22nd, and who are now accepting the Sabbath of the fourth commandment as the sign or the seal of the living God, were devising ways and means of presenting their message to the world. You are too late with your sealing message, their fellow believers of earlier days asserted, for the battle of the great day of the Lord's actual coming and the Lord's actual coming are right upon us.
So according to this passage, it makes me to understand they rejected it, because when these guys who are presenting the third angel message presented, they were like, you're too late with your sealing message, which is the Sabbath, for the battle of Armageddon, which is the confusion in Europe, as is already at hand.
So you're saying the fellow believers of earlier days, these are the Adventist ministers who haven't heard of the third angel's message. And my sister.
I think the reason why they do not hear the third angel's message is because they reject October 22nd. And once they reject October 22nd, they put themselves in a position where they are not able to hear the third angel's message.
And their time setting.
Okay, I see your hand.
So I'm having a question.
You having a question?
If they rejected the second October, what made them to be called Adventists?
Well, Ellen White talks about first day Adventists.
Adventists.
Because the people who rejected October 22nd, 1844, they haven't rejected the Advent. All they've rejected is the date. So they're going to move the date, and they're going to say, we still believe in the Advent, but it's next year or the year after. So they can still be called Adventists. Did you say something? Did you want to say something?
What I say is the question that you asked, I just answer, because they were still looking at the second Advent.
Okay.
I'm talking from small biographies. I don't know how to pronounce his name. No?
Loughborough. That's fine.
He was born in 1832. And then at the age of 17, died in 1849. He was a late preacher for the first day Adventist.
He was a lay preacher for First Day Adventist.
At Sunday.
Is it?
First day Adventist.
Oh yeah, it's Sunday. Okay, so you're inferring that the group, it says here he was 16, he was part of a group which were not Sabbath keepers. Obviously they're first day people, but are they people that have rejected October 22nd or not? Do we know that?
Because it says that he underwent the disappointment in October 22nd.
He what?
He underwent the disappointment in October 22nd with the family. So in 1849, he was associating himself with the first day Adventists.
Sister Emma?
In the passage from Parminder, the Bible is taken from, he says, first day Adventists say, there are two ladies, you'll see the message, it actually says first day Adventists was there.
Where are you reading?
In John Loughborough's book.
Okay, we're going to read Loughborough's book in a second.
And the other thing I want to say is I think you can make a case that that word heard there can be, when you look at Webster's definitions of the word heard, it doesn't always mean just heard, it means to attend, to listen, to obey, to attend faithfully, to regard. So I think we could say they haven't regarded it, haven't obeyed it, rather than just heard it. You could put that in there.
Okay, so we're going to turn heard into something else.
Something else that we understand.
Brother?
I got a quote that can also support that and say that the first day Adventist, if you allow me to read it.
Where's the quote from?
From the Great Second Advent.
Okay, we're going to read that in a second. We're going to read his version of the biography. So I'm probably going to read the same one that you've got there, because that's where she got it from. The same, you're reading the same thing.
Okay, I want to say that I also agree with what my brother was saying, but also to add.
Which brother?
Him.
What was he saying?
He was saying that the many of the Adventists were unfaithful. The ones that had not yet had the third, that's been the first 5 years, had not yet had the third announcement. They were, and if you look at this verse in it, I don't know, it's not what I was painting a picture of there was some kind of a controversy between those that received the third end and those that have not yet seen. And those that received the third end are preparing to begin publications, to begin to circulate publications about the Sabbath and the life that we have. But these brothers are saying, look here, you are too late with your message, you're too late with your work. That work is not important as per now. What is important is that you see the nations are fighting, so it's the gathering of the dead part of God. And you can show from that argument that they were having communication. they were in touch with one another, and this brother at some point understood what the faithful brothers were doing.
Okay. When we know very well, they knew that Armageddon has to happen before Christ comes. And their understanding of Christ's second coming was supposed to be 1844 October 22nd, isn't it? So we cannot say that they rejected the Sabbath message, but because the statement is saying they had not yet heard, yeah, that can make them unfaithful or bad people.
It can or it can't.
Yeah, because
which one you say?
1844.
It can or it cannot.
Yeah. After 18.
No, you are. It can or it cannot. Which one? I didn't hear what you said.
It cannot.
It cannot.
Yeah.
So it says they haven't heard. That means that they're not unfaithful.
Yes. But they have not yet heard. If they had heard, then they would have found that either they didn't regard it or they took it as an because. But my point is that this group of Adventists, because of the message, is not like today whereby we have so many ways of communicating to every part of the world. We have to consider so many things. The group which had the message and they started keeping the Sabbath, like Parminder started keeping it in 1846, and already someone who was keeping it before that time. Did that make Parminder the bad person or unfaithful? Yeah? She was accounted faithful after she had heard of it and regarded it, then she started putting it in practice. So this group, those who went through October 22nd, but had not yet heard the word. They had not yet heard the message. Or a group which was before the October 22nd, and since they were worshipping on Sunday, they were called First-day Adventists. And all their mind was that looking at October 22nd has been the end of the world when Christ is coming. So they had to take these signs of the distress of nation in Europe as being the war leading to Armageddon.
So you don't like Sister Emma's dictionary definition that says when you hear something, it means, hear means what? Obey. To obey. Just like, we haven't done this, but when it says see, no one is going to see all of these events. No one's going to see them. You're only going to see a couple of events, and then you're going to die. We'll accept that.
I want to ask Brother. He's repeating. I want to ask him.
Now you ask me. Don't ask. I don't want people asking themselves questions between themselves. You just tell us what you think.
No, I was asking that why is it these people are saying you're too late with your message?
You tell us why.
I'm telling the reason is because they have rejected it. Because how would you say you're too late with your message and it is the third angel message?
Everyone agrees, verse 6, these people have rejected.
He's not agreeing.
I'm not interested in what he's saying.
But you're saying everyone...
I'm saying I'm not interested in what he's saying. You tell us what you're saying. You say verse 6, they've rejected. Okay? So let me ask him. In verse 6, paragraph 6, not verse 6, it says this. But the Adventists who had clung to their confidence in the prophecy of October 22nd and were now accepting the Sabbath and fourth commandment, they were getting ready to present their message. It says, their fellow believers 4 years before, in October 1844 and before that, they said it's too late. It says they were their fellow believers. So these people in verse 6, have they rejected October 1844? Not the verse 5 who hadn't heard, the verse 6. Their fellow believers in the earlier days, they said, you've got it all wrong. Are they the rejectors? You tell me what you think. Okay, you can't do it without having it in front of you. It says their fellow believers of earlier days, they're not they're not fellow believers anymore. They were fellow believers before. You get that from verse 6. So you agree that verse 6 is talking about people who rejected. Anyone else got a point?
Mine is another point, but there are some people are saying that Gabriel is in the side of those who are rejecting the message. But when I'm reading the quote here, then you give a description of two classes, but I'm not really understanding his position. Because there are many advantages, or many advantages, and then you compare two classes, but his position, I don't see it yet.
Many Adventist ministers. You don't know where Loughborough is in this history.
Yeah.
He associates with a group who are not Sabbath keepers. They're First Day Adventists. In 1848, that's who's associating with. Did you come with an answer?
Yeah, we can see that the assertion of saying that the guys are too late for the cancelling message is because of the misconception they had of saying that the great day of the Lord is at hand.
And why have they got that misconception?
Because they had a misconception because of the fulfillment of prophecy, which they said it marks the coming of Christ.
Because they rejected October of 44.
No, they knew at October 24 Christ must come.
4 years later, he hasn't come. Yeah, he hasn't come 4 years later. And the Adventists are saying, we're going to start preaching the Sabbath, and they're saying it's too late because he's about to come now because Armageddon is here.
Yes, they are looking at the circumstances in Europe.
Exactly. It says they're fellow believers of earlier days. Why are they not believers with them now? Because they don't believe the same thing. So what caused the separation?
The Sabbath.
Sabbath didn't cause the separation. She says, who clung to October 44, they're the ones that are presenting the Sabbath message, and their former brethren are saying it's the Armageddon message. So the verse is saying the people who accept 44 accept the third angel, the Sabbath, and the ones therefore who reject 44 are now going to proclaim Armageddon. In verse 6 it says that. Paragraph 6. Agree with that?
Yeah.
So Brother Andrew, he agrees, verse 6 with you. Okay, so next paragraph, 154 paragraph 1. In the vision of Dorchester of November 18th, there was a call for publishing the third angel's message. Now, 3 weeks later, on the evening of the Sabbath at Rocky Hill, Connecticut, Ellen White was again in vision. This one clarified an interpretation of Matthew 24, verses 29 and 30. And there's 3 paragraphs, and these 3 paragraphs are what are in early writings 41, so we've read them. So she has 2 visions. She has one vision in November 18th, and another one December 16th. So about a month later. They say here it's 3 weeks later. There's one in Dorchester and there's one in Rocky Hills, and the Dorchester one says what? You need to publish the third angel's message, and the one in Rocky Hills is about Matthew 24 verse 29. That's wrong. So what we want to do now, I want to go to Loughborough's book, which is GSAM. I don't know how you go about how you're going to find that. It's 1905 JNL GSAM, page 270. So there's various ways of doing that. JNL 1905 GSAM. And it begins page 270. So there's quite a lot of reading for this one, because I want to give some background on this. When you were going to do the first day Adventist, what page was that?
What?
You were going to do the first Adventist. What page were you at?
I was at the 272.
272. I think it's going to be in this one. If it isn't, then remind me to read that one. So the first one, the pioneers endure hardness. Elder White, in the Review and Herald of 1880, when speaking of those pioneer days, gives a quote, and he said it was very difficult in those days. So we're going to skip that bit. Same paragraph. The year 1848, sorry, next paragraph, 270 paragraph 4. The year 1848 was memorable, not only in the Advent history, but politically. So what would we say if it's the Advent history and politically? What would we call that today? What terminology do we use? Brother, what terminology do we use when we say that? In the Advent history and politically, we say it... Sorry? We could use church and state. I was thinking of something else. Sorry? Turning point? Internal, external. I was thinking internal, external. So you've got internal, external. The reason why that becomes important for me, if you go to Millerite history, depending on how many waymarks you want to pick up, how many external events do we have in the Millerite line? So we've got 1840, empowerment of the first angel, internal, external, the troubles in Europe. What other ones do we have? We've got 1798. What other ones? Sorry? 1833, the stars falling, an external event. (1818) No. April 44, July, August, October. So most of the major events that we have, we don't have external events. But now we come to this history, and the first thing we want to notice is that they've got an internal and external event at the same point in time. The truths of the third angel's message were very well defined, and the way was opening in different directions for the advancement of the work. So it says that the truths of the third angel's message were very well defined. What does that mean if they're very well defined? It must mean that they're mature. So the understanding of the third angel's message now is a mature message. At this time, events in the moral and political world were assuming a shape calculated to arouse anew the attention of the students of prophecy. Which students of prophecy? Seventh-day Adventists?
Who have accepted the light of the third angel.
Only those who have accepted the light of the third angel? When we go back to the other passage in the biography, who are the ones that are agitating the issue? It's the first-day Adventists, the ones who have failed. So I'd argue everybody, all students of prophecy, whether you're in the movement, the message, or out, all of them are getting excited. They're looking around and they're saying, this looks like a fulfillment of prophecy. Not only was there great confusion among the nations of the old world, that's Europe, but at Hydesville, Wayne County, New York, began the manifestations of modern spiritualism, which Bible students said must be the spirits of devils, which are to gather the nations of the earth to the battle of the day of the Lord. So how many events have you got? 3 events? We've got the third angel's message, we've got spiritualism, and we've got confusion in Europe. So it says at this time events in the moral and political world. What's the moral world? In the Christian world.
Internal.
I don't think it's necessarily internal. I think it's just in the Christian world, or someone said church and state. There's something in the church and there's something in the state. So what is the moral world? What's the moral issue? What's the event that's in... That's spiritualism. So there's spiritualism going on, there's political upheaval, and God's people, the movement, are doing the third angel's message. They're doing their own little private thing. So when it says, which Bible students said must be the spirits of devils, which Bible students are those? Are they... Is that Alan, what do we call them? Let's call them the movement. Is that the movement, or is that other Bible students? Other ones? Anybody says it's the movement? Because these students, what are they saying? The spirits are doing what? They're gathering them to Armageddon. So these Bible students have not accepted the spiritualism that's going on in the moral world, but they recognize that spiritualism is a manifestation of the preparation of Armageddon. So if we use first day and seventh day, these must be first day Adventists. Do you agree with that? Next paragraph. Confusion of the nations in 1848. On the 21st day of February 1848, when the courtiers of Louis Philippe of France were gathered around him, he said, "I was never more firmly seated on the throne of empire than I am tonight." In the twilight of the next evening, wearing a pea jacket, described as a hackney coachman, he fled outside the walls of the city of Paris, seeking refuge for his personal safety. Someone just paraphrase that. My brother? You just paraphrase those two sentences. I think it's two. Cannot? My brother? Can you paraphrase? Have you got it in front of you, or? I'll read it again, you paraphrase. On the 21st day of February 1848, when the courtiers of Louis Philippe of France were gathered around him, he said, "I was never more firmly seated on the throne of empire than I am tonight." In the twilight of the next evening, wearing a pea jacket, disguised as a hackney coachman, he fled outside the walls of the city of Paris, seeking refuge for his personal safety. My brother? Speak a little bit louder, it doesn't get caught.
The King of France was sitting with his cabinet one evening. The next day, a revolution happens and he is overthrown from his throne.
Okay, so on the 21st of February, he's sitting with his cabinet and he says, "My throne is firmly established." The next day, he's running for his life. So something happens in those 24 hours. So then he's going to tell us what it is. The cause of this great and sudden change is said to have been the result of some movement on his part favouring the papal usurpation, which offended his subjects and his soldiers. So he says something supporting the papacy, and whatever he said that supported the papacy, it upset the people. He had on that day completed in the city of Paris a grand military view of the French army, and when their arms were stacked, he retired to the palace, when suddenly a small boy jumped upon a cannon waving a tricoloured flag. What's the tricoloured flag? Sorry? The flag of France, crying, "Down with the Pope, down with the Pope." The soldiers, taking up the cry, it passed swiftly up and down the lines, gaining strength as it went, until connected with the cry was another cry, and down with the king. In a few hours all Paris was a scene of wild confusion. The soldiers with guns in hands, accompanied by a mob, were rushing for the king's palace. He, on being informed of the turmoil, hastened to escape under disguise. So he gives some kind of support to the papacy, and people are going to use that as a pretext, not only because they reject the Pope, but they're also going to use that as a pretext to take the king down. Next paragraph. Nations that were involved in the struggle. The commotion and unrest of France spread rapidly to other countries. Prussia, Hanover. What's Hanover? Sardinia, Sicily, Naples, Venice, Lombardy, Italy, Tuscany, Italy, and Rome, Italy, caught the same mob spirit. Within 3 months, all Europe was astir, and over 30 empires and kingdoms were in the greatest disorder. Thrones were burned in the streets. Kings and emperors were fleeing and hiding for fear of losing their lives. Politicians predicted that there would be a general revolution of the governments of the world. Many of the Adventist ministers who had as not yet heard of the third angel's message saw this confusion and supposed it must be the rallying of the nations for the battle of the great day of God Almighty. So that's what we read from the biography. She cut that out from this book and pasted it there. He lists all these countries. What he doesn't do is actually say where it all started. Does anybody know where it starts? Where these revolutions start? It actually starts in Sicily. But the way he writes it, he writes it in France. Because his focus is in France. I mean, Sicily, no insult to Sicily, it's only a little island at the toe of Italy, and it doesn't really have that much relevance to things. The sealing message discovered. Just at this time, the Seventh-day Adventists were learning from the Scriptures that the Sabbath of the fourth commandment was the sign or seal of the living God, and that the time had arrived for the proclamation of the sealing message of Revelation 10, verses 1 to 4. And they were devising ways and means of getting this message before the people. While the Seventh-day people were preparing for this work, the First-day Adventists were saying, "You are too late with your sealing message, for the battle of the great day of the Lord's actual coming are right upon us." So there's a couple of things. Now comes the time for the proclaiming of the sealing message of Revelation 10, 1 to 4. What do we normally do with Revelation 10, 1 to 4? Sorry? We say that's the first angel's message. We mark it in 1840, and they're saying the time had arrived for the proclamation of the sealing message of Revelation 10 verses 1 to 4. So they're placing this where? In 48. I don't know how we read that the time has arrived for the proclamation of the sealing message. I presume they're saying we're the angel of Revelation 10, and therefore Revelation 10 is being fulfilled now. Is that how we read that? No. So they're making an application there. Don't know if we agree with that. Do we agree with that? Who agrees with that? Sorry? That agrees Revelation 10, 1 to 4 is now going to be fulfilled in 1848. Put your hands up if you agree with that. Okay. So is that, put your hands up if you don't agree with that. Well, no one's putting their hand up, and I'm thinking, is it because they're lazy, or they don't know, or what? So I changed the question around. I said, put your hands up if you don't agree, and no one still puts their hand up. So why did you not put your hand up?
I'm confused.
You're confused. Okay. Put your hands up if you're confused. Okay, so most people are confused. Sister Emma, are you confused?
No, I'm just not sure whether to make that application.
Okay, if you're not confused, tell us what we're just reading.
We're reading about the...
Not the whole thing, just this bit.
Okay, they're making an application of Revelation 10 and saying that they're in this time of sealing, and they're applying it to 1848, Revelation 10, 1 to 4. And And we usually apply that to 1840 for the presidential power. The question is, can we apply it as they're using it? Are they using it correctly?
So my first question is, another one, what did the Millerites do with Revelation 10? 1798 to 1844, what did they do with Revelation 10? Does anybody know? Because I'm thinking about it and I'm thinking, actually I'm not even sure what they do with it. Did they have a position on Revelation 10? No? I don't. So I haven't seen one either. I have no clear understanding of what the Millerites did with Revelation 10. We have a very definite position of Revelation 10. And we get our definite position of Revelation 10 from where? What's the logic that we use?
The logic we use to definitely put Revelation 10 in 1840. We see the general sense put in there the descent of a divine symbol which empowers the first angel. So we see the angel of Revelation chapter 10 descending, then we take it there.
So why bring it in 1840? Why 1840? Sorry? Okay, so but what's the wording? What's the code? The symbol that we're seeing to place it there? Because she doesn't tell it's in 1840, I don't think. The sea and the earth. She talks about the sea and the earth, and she says that means the message is going to go across the world. And then we make the application that that's 1840, where the message goes across the world. Is that a fair approximation of how it goes? Ellen White doesn't mark it in 1840, does she? I don't believe she does. And there's only one Spirit of Prophecy quote, isn't it? It's in either 7 BC or manuscript 59. I think it might be another place as well. So, yeah, 7 BC, is it 971? 971. And in manuscript 59, 1900. That's the original place. Then it got taken out of them, put into 7 BC. Because 7 BC is a Bible commentary. So I think that's the only place that she talks about this chapter. And she gives a lot of information. And in fact, if you read the first part of the passage, I don't know if people know it well, paraphrase it well enough, where would she really place that? If we were going to read her words as written, instead of doing what we normally do. Let me read the first bit to us. It's in your study Bibles, if you have a study Bible. The mighty angel who instructed John was no less a personage than Jesus Christ, setting his right foot upon the sea and his left foot upon the dry land. And then it tells you what that means. And what does it mean? It doesn't mean worldwide. Showing the part which he's acting in the closing scenes of the great controversy with Satan. The position denotes his supreme power and authority over the whole earth. The controversy has waxed stronger and more determined from age to age, and will continue to do so to the concluding scenes when the masterly working of the powers of darkness shall reach their height. In 1840, had the masterful powers of darkness reached their height? They haven't even begun to reach their height yet. So where is she placing Revelation 10, just with that introductory thought? Sorry? It's at the end of the world, isn't it? Where Satan has now reached his primary place, reached the height, and now Christ is standing in opposition to him. So in that context, it seems to be a lot further along the road than Millerite history. If we went to 90, Testimony Church Volume 9, page 11, What's that title called? Do we know?
Last crisis.
Is it? I don't think.
The coming of the king.
Isn't it for the coming of the king? And the introductory, I think it's the first sentence. It may not be, but it's in the first paragraph. What does she say? About I think the powers of darkness or the powers of evil. So I'll paraphrase it while someone's finding it. I think she says the powers of evil are consolidating their forces.
The last crisis.
Last crisis.
That's the section of it.
That's the main.
That's the title of the last crisis, not for the coming of the king.
This last crisis.
Sorry?
The last crisis.
Okay, so it's for the coming of the king. That's the chapter title. Then the subsection is the last crisis. And what does it say about the consolidation?
Combining their forces and consolidating.
So the agencies of evil are combining and consolidating. And I would argue that that's the height of darkness. When they've consolidated and combined, they've come to the height, and that's what's being referred to in Revelation 10. But we make an application to bring this into 1840. And we have good reasons to do that. When you see about time no longer, Ellen White's going to quote the time no longer as October 1844. So she places this in another commentary pre-1844.
So are you saying like when we put Revelation chapter 10, 1840, that's an application?
Well, I guess what I'm saying is Ellen White makes it difficult for us. Because when she says time no longer, and I don't think that's in this, I don't think it's here, is it? Time no longer is somewhere else.
Yeah. But I thought the reason why we put Revelation chapter 10 in 1840 is because we link it with the Revelation chapter 9.
Yes.
Do the calculations, we show where they end, and then gives it.
But we're assuming that chapter 10 is sequential to chapter 9. But I don't know if we can prove or demonstrate that. Can we?
In the same passage,
Sorry?
in the same passage, you don't refer to time to the history.
In which same passage? Oh, okay. Where's that? Begins with? The special light given to John, which was expressed in the seven thunders. Okay, it's Millerite history, yes, so you're right on that. So, the first paragraph to me doesn't sound like Millerite history. It sounds like post-Millerite history. And then the special light is obviously Millerite history. Then the next one, it says, the time which the angel declares with a solemn oath is not the end of this world's history, neither of probationary time, but of prophetic time, which brings you down to 1844. She says the autumn of 1844. So she mingles, I think, Millerite history with the end of the world. So we can pick and choose either way we want to do that. So if we were to do that, when we come back to Revelation 10 here, they're saying, this is, so I'll read it again. Just as the Seventh-day Adventists were learning from the Scriptures that the Sabbath of the Fourth Commandment was the seal or sign or seal of the living God, and that the time had arrived for the proclamation of the sealing message of Revelation 10, 1-4, devising ways of getting out the message, they're making an application of 1848. And we would say that was wrong, wouldn't we?
What point did they recognise that they had to press that again? And that they had been disappointed about his writing the book?
I don't know anything about. I don't know. That's why I'm asking other people. I don't know if they actually go into Revelation 10, check all of that symbology, and say we're doing this now. I'm not sure if they have an awareness that they're going to prophesy again and they've eaten the book or not. I've not read anything. I'm not saying it's not there.
So they have got a distance to put it there if they understand that they've got to press that again.
Yeah, I don't know if they recognised that they were doing it in the first place.
don't know. I don't know whether we take it to mean, but they're saying that Revelation 10 is the same message. So if that's what they're saying, then they need to believe that they understand. Because the angel, if you read the Revelation 10, we're told that the angel that had an angel in his hand open. And I might think that he's making an application that the eating of the book is the same message, because we also understand it as the eat the same. But also, this angel had his hand on the sea. His one foot on the sea, one foot on the sea, and one foot on the earth. I don't know which one's that. Yeah, verse 2. And then his hand on the sea, and he set his right foot upon the sea, and his left foot on the earth. So they're understanding that this eating, this little book that the angel is having is the same message. But also this angel is having his hand, his foot on the earth and on the sea, symbolizing the message, how we support the proclamation of the message as it goes from the earth.
Who's the angel?
So I'm making the application that these angels represent them. Is the faithful.
Who's John?
Is the faithful Adventist.
The angel is the faithful Adventist.
Yes.
And who's John then?
John is a symbol of those faithful Adventists, because John is told to take the book out of the angels.
By whom?
Right here.
And who's the angel? The faithful people. And what are these faithful people going to do?
They are going to share the message.
They're going to go around the world and share the message.
Yes.
And when you share a message to someone, what do you tell them to do with that message? So who is the faithful Adventist? Who are they speaking to? And they say, eat.
So they are speaking to the people in the world.
So who's John?
So John is the people. John is the people in the world. Yeah.
You okay with that? So it's a pretty consistent message or logic that they have.
Yes.
That they're saying, now is the time to give the third angel's message across the world. We're not there yet, but it's about to happen. Because they're going to start publishing it. And so they're going to make everybody eat this message.
Yes.
So the book, I don't know how they describe what the book is, if it's just a Bible, but the book is the sealing message, or the seal, or the Sabbath message, and they're going to go around the world forcing people to eat it. Agree with that? My brother?
Yeah, what I'm saying here, the boy that was telling John to go and take the little book from the angel is a boy that came from heaven.
Yes.
The same angel that was telling John.
Okay, yes, you're right, yes. The voice says, take it from the angel.
And then eat it.
And the angel is going around the world. So you still agree with the conclusion that John must be the person who's receiving the message from the angel,
Exactly.
which is the world.
He received the message, and then he eats it, and he goes home and also give it out.
Goes
Around the world, give the message out.
Well, he doesn't say John does that.
Symbol of the faithful.
The people who accept this message, yeah. Are we okay with that? can we make an application then? Are we okay to make an application or accept their application that 1848 is Revelation 10?
They are making an application, so we can also make an application.
They make one, we make one. So that must mean they were right.
Yes. They were right.
You are right, even as we are right if you make the application.
Okay, so let me ask you another question. Which is the proper original application? 1840 or 1848?
1840.
1840 is the proper real one,
Yes.
not 1848.
Yeah. 1848 are applying.
Okay?
According to me, when I read that text, it is not Revelation 10, it's Revelation 7, 1 to 4. There was typing error when you read that original.
Sorry?
I'm saying because it is addressing the sealing message, and you can see the sealing message.
So you're saying it's a typo?
There was a problem of typing.
Why are we laughing for?
Okay, they are laughing, but me, I have an argument where there is another quote. There is a typing error in the book of Leviticus. They are writing different. When you go direct to that verse, you will not see that verse, but it is a type error. So for me, it is Revelation 7, 1 to 4, which is talking about sealing.
You may be right. Let's find it out.
Sister Emma?
I was just going to make that point because I don't see anywhere else where we call Revelation 10 as a moving message. Because what makes it that about seeing, so the book is sealed. I don't see why we're saying those verses are the sealing message. So if they at the same time writes the pamphlet on the sealing message, it's all Revelation 7 4. So I'm not sure whether it's going to.
Yes, let's check it.
I did say before, what did I say about Elder Loughborough? Have you seen what he says about Exeter?
I'm also thinking so because we've gone ahead to up to Revelation chapter 10 verses 9, 10 to bring in the sheep and all this that eat and all that. But he's only quoting 1 to 4. And this book is rewritten in 1905 because this book initially it was banned in battlefield.
I didn't know that. Why is it banned?
It was banned in the library. This book is a rewritten book.
It's a what book?
It's rewritten.
Oh, burned. Sorry, I thought you said it was banned. Banned. It was burnt. Sorry, I didn't know it was a banned book. Sorry, it was burnt. The original plates were burnt.
This could be a typo.
Oh, okay. So it's the original one may have had 7, and this is maybe a typo.
Because I'm not seeing any sealing message in verse 1.
Sorry?
The sealing message is there in verse 1.
But it's more clear in verse 7.
It's there. And he had in his hand a little book open. That's it?
Yes.
Okay, when we teach about the third war at the end of the world, you two say that in the first war there was a sealing, in the second there was a sealing. How do you prove a sealing in the second war?
How do we prove a sealing from the second row?
We normally go to verse 2.
Verse 2 with the rest of them. Because
We go to verse 2 in Revelation 10.
We use a quotation which says that sealing is a settling into the truth, intellectual and spiritual, and we can see that in verse 2.
The glad reading of the book is the glad reception.
Okay, so I guess the problem is if we're going to say it's a typo, got to have some kind of evidence.
I will find that.
Sorry?
I have an evidence of another book where there was typing error. They removed a verse, and then when you see the verse, the numbers, it is different from what you read from the Bible.
I'm willing to accept that the plates were burned and they made new plates and there was a typo. I'm willing to accept that, but if you go here, it talks about the proclamation. In Revelation 7, it doesn't talk about a proclamation. There's no. You agree with that? There's no proclaiming in Revelation 7. I don't think there is there? In Revelation 7, I don't think it talks about proclaiming. So that seems to be Revelation 10 language, the proclaiming, which is verse 3, 10:3, a proclamation's being made. The sealing message, we can argue that it is a sealing message. Someone said something?
So you're saying 10:3 says it doesn't say proclamation?
Oh, 10:3 says he cried with a loud voice.
So you cried with a loud voice in 7 as well?
Can I hear you?
Revelation 7 says cried with a loud voice. Revelation 2 says, and he cried with a loud voice as
Okay, yeah, so I guess that we agree, he proclaims as well then.
Okay, it's a quotation. GSAM 268 paragraph 1.
268 paragraph 1.
It's something that GSM, in the same book. GSAM 268 paragraph 1.
This conference in Western New York was held in Mr. Arnold's carriage house. There were about 35 persons present, all that could be collected in that part of the state, but hardly two of these were agreed. Each was strenuous in his own views, declaring that they were according to the Bible, or were anxious to advance their sentiments and to preach. They were told that Elder White and his wife had not come so great a distance to hear them, but had come to teach them. Mr. Arnold held that the 1,000 years of Revelation 20 were in the past, and that the 144,000 mentioned in Revelation were those raised in Christ's resurrection.
So what I can say is that there was confusion about the sealing message, and that is why Ellen White will go and address that issue. So when we come to the book that we were reading about the sealing message, it is Revelation chapter 7, 1 to 4.
Mm-hmm. How is that put address on the sealing message?
Sorry, how what?
The quote that the brothers just read. I don't see the sealing message.
144,000.
Let me go back one paragraph. As the result of the circulation of Elder Bates' tract among Adventist persons in other states, they began the observance of the Sabbath. Edson wrote inviting Elder and Mrs. White and others to attend a conference of Sabbath keepers in Volney, Oswego County in August 1848. So same year, 1848. He said that the brethren were generally poor and could not promise that they would do much towards defraying the expenses. Elder White had received $40 as a result of labour performed in the hayfield. This conference in Western New York was held at Mr. Arnold's carriage house. There were about 35 persons present, and all that could be collected in that part of the state, but hardly two of these were agreed. Each was strenuous for their own views, declaring that they were according to the Bible. All were anxious to advance their sentiments and to preach them. They were told that the whites had not come to listen to them, but had come to teach them. Mr. Arnold held that the 1,000 years of Revelation 20 were in the past, and that the 144,000 mentioned in Revelation were those raised at Christ's resurrection. So, what are you saying about that?
So what I say is that they had erroneous view about the sealing. So because you see, Arnold held that 144,000 were resurrected in the time, were resurrected in the time of Christ, and Christ resurrected.
Okay, but no one's listening to him.
Yes.
Because Ellen White and James White have the correct view.
So they have the correct view, and now he's coming to address. Now, when we go to our quote that we are saying Revelation 10, according to me, it is that there was a typing. The people who came to record that book, to rewrite that book, they mistyped that. Instead of Revelation 7, it is they wrote Revelation 10.
You see, it's very...
Anyone want to make a comment? Yep.
But not on this one.
Sorry?
I don't want to have a comment on this one. I wanted to make a comment on what we were looking at. So, we read Luke 21, verse 25, and we were trying to define the distress that is the distress of the nation and the army of the nation. That's why we went to what was taking place in 1848 and what. So we see that they were making an application. They were making an application of Luke 25, Luke 21 verse 25, which some extent was correct. So we can also, Sister White is also making an application of 10:35. So we can also make an application of Luke 21. So they are making an application that is 1848, but we are making an application and saying it's 1840 because we have not looked at any quotation either from the Parminder or from Sister White. It's identifying that the shaking of the hand of the distress of the nation was 1840. We are making that application. And to me, I see that's a correct application because the Millerites are making an application using that same part to say the shaking of the hand, the distress and the shaking of the powers of the heart took place in 1848, and we are making it to be 1840. So both of those applications can be correct.
We need to close. Our class is finished. I've been told we need to finish, otherwise the recording doesn't work properly. So we'll close here. Still unresolved. If you get a chance, please read the rest of this section from Loughborough's work all the way down to 54.4 if you get a chance. Let's pray. 154, yeah. So it's 153 to 154. Heavenly Father, we give you praise and thanks for your goodness and your mercy. We ask that you would guide, direct and bless us. Help us, Lord, to wrestle with your word and to have a clearer understanding of the things that you want us to understand and the things that they're teaching us. Help us, Lord, to apply the rules that you have given to us, to look for primary applications before we come to secondary ones. We ask and pray for these blessings in the precious holy name of Jesus. Amen.